Hi, I'm Mitesh, a DIY content creator. If you saw my recent home tour, you know I like putting a modern take on traditional crafts. So I wanted to share how to create what's called Lippan Kaam, which literally translates to mud and clay work. It's actually a way that people would decorate and still do their mud homes. So here's where I've displayed the Lippan Kaam work. Just like that, you could add it to a shelf or even on the wall. Here's another example of Lippan Kaam that I actually did in shadow boxes, and then I was able to incorporate it into a gallery wall. What I love about folk art is it's very forgiving. You know, again, it kind of comes from the people just wanting to create nice spaces for themselves. It allows for so much creativity and flexibility, but then the actual design itself can be whatever you want. Lippan Kaam, you normally see it in either like a terracotta color or a whitewash, but you can even add your own color, you know, make it as colorful as you want, and you know, it still works. You're gonna start off with a board. It could be a wood plaque or an MDF board, but something that's firm. Your first step is gonna be to sketch your drawing out. You can do it directly onto the board, or what I like to do is draw it out on a piece of paper or tracing paper, and then use some transfer paper to go ahead and transfer it onto your board. Now, one of the things when you're making your design, you want to make sure that it's not too detailed, because that'll be difficult for the clay. And really, it could be anything you want. I'm doing traditional, simple geometric patterns, and then a simple peacock motif. When you're creating your design, you want to make sure it's not too detailed and that there's enough space in between your lines, because we are going to be rolling clay out into fine tubes, and that are going to be placed over the lines. So you want to make sure you have some space on both sides of your lines. Making it as simple as possible will work out much better. The other thing you want to do is that as you're kind of coming up with your design and sketching it out, you want to, in the back of your mind, kind of figure out where you're going to put in mirrors. You know, even making this sketch, I wanted to be sure I was able to get mirrors into the triangles as well as this space here. So once you have your sketch on your board, you're ready to get to work with the clay. We're going to start off with air dry clay. You want to grab a small piece, rolling it out into thin strips so that we can basically outline our entire sketch. If you have water on hand, it's really nice because this clay does start drying pretty quick. Now this is the part that I actually find pretty therapeutic. You want to apply pressure evenly because you want it to actually be one long even string. Now we're going to stick it onto the board. I just have some tacky glue here. You could use wood glue. Basically, you want to start with outlining the sketch where you're going to lay down your first row of clay. Glue right on top of it. While this clay is wet, it's pretty forgiving, so you can wet your fingers and kind of smooth it out once you have it down. Once you get your portion down, you can go ahead and I like to just wet my fingers, smooth it all out, make sure everything's where you want it to be. Because this clay tends to dry fast, I like to go ahead and add any embellishments or markings you want to do while this portion is still wet. So you could take some of the things that are more common are dots. You could do little slash marks, using a blade or a knife. Here I'll go ahead and put in little indentations. You could do this with a pen or pencil. But anything really, you can get as creative as you want. So once your clay is completely laid out and you're happy with the result, you're going to want to let this completely dry, which with the air dry clay is about 2 days. So we're gonna go ahead and fill this up, let it dry, and we'll then move on to the painting process. So once your paint is all dry, we're ready to start embellishing with mirror pieces. So I have a couple different shapes here that I ordered online. You know, when I was sketching it out, I did kind of have in mind where the shapes were gonna go. Again, using the tacky glue, it's just we're just simply gonna add a drop of glue and your mirror piece. So another variation of this is to actually build the clay around the mirror pieces. And it is a little more tedious when you're actually painting over it, because you kind of have to avoid painting over the mirrors. This type of art typically covers the outside of mud homes and some of the villages, and so the thought behind the mirrors were that they were actually protective against kind of evil spirits. Here's an example of a finished piece, and actually have hanging up on my wall. So ways you can display it, I think, are as part of a gallery wall with a bunch of other artwork, and I think it would just pop. I love the reflection that the mirror gives in different lights. Even just have it on display on its own on a shelf, or with some, kind of leaning against the wall. So whenever you hang it up on the wall, once it's there, it's a story that you can tell someone that's gonna look at it, and I just love that. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to Handmade for more content like this.